Hey guys, welcome back to World of Warships. Today we're taking a look at a brand new Italian cruiser tier 7, and check this out. We got a burst fire on an Italian ship, so that is a Dev-Struck Myoko off spawn. I am gonna like this thing a lot, I can tell. Tier 7 here, this is going to be available in the next update's event pass, and that is going to be for 3,000 doubloons. You gotta get partway through the event pass, but that's where you'll find the Fiume? Apologies for pronunciation here. But this ship is a little bit unlike most Italian cruisers that we see. This ship does not have sap. So you may think, it's gonna be a little bit worse at dev-striking those destroyers. Well, the burst fire is pretty good at that too, I gotta say. Burst fire here is going to give us 2 salvos with a 1.5 second downtime between them. And then we have a very long reload, a 36.5 second reload after those 2 bursts. This ship usually has a 13.2 second reload on these main guns here, so you are losing quite a bit of DPM to go for your burst, as usual. But it's well worth it with that 20% dispersion buff. Yes, buff dispersion. You know me. More consistency, more better. I just enjoy that so much. That's why the dispersion looked so consistent with these burst fires. We also get a buff to the HE shell pen, a 59% buff to HE shell pen if you decide to burst out the high explosive here. I'm going to usually use it for armor piercing unless it's HE into destroyers like that one. Typically, though, you're not going to use that extra pen, but it does get you over 50 millimeters of pen. The normal HE shell pen here is 34 millimeters, more than enough for tier 7. That's the thing. At higher tier, we start to see a lot more 40 and 50 millimeter plating, but not at mid tier. There's a lot of 26, maybe some 32 millimeter plating, so it's not as big a deal in my opinion. This ship, again, very different from the Italian cruiser line since we don't have any sap here. I would say that is a downside generally. I think the sap on Italian cruisers is extremely powerful. But the one downside to that sap is you don't get access to fire damage, dots, damage over time, which is very good at dealing with enemy battleships. So here, having a pretty solid fire chance of 15% base, we can buff that up. At these mid tiers, ships tend to not have very high fire resistances. That dramatically goes up as you get towards tier 10 and super ships tier. So a 15% fire chance base looks pretty good. I was getting some relatively consistent fires. And actually, the alpha damage on the HE isn't too bad either at 2,850. The AP alpha damage, by the way, is at 4,800, so pretty nice alpha damage there. No improved pen angles on it. Also, we have normal fuses, and the arming threshold is 34 millimeters. So you might find on some very light cruisers, if you're not hitting the Citadel, you might actually overpen them, thanks to that 34 millimeter arming threshold there, normal fuse times. But I found it to be not much of an issue, to be honest with you. Burst firing the AP into broadside cruisers was absolutely incredible with this ship. So many cruisers at this tier have very exposed citadels, and, well, this ship does too, okay? You gotta be very careful with this ship. Trying to push into battleships here, probably not the best idea. I'm relying a lot on my maneuverability, and of course, also the Italian flavor of exhaust smoke generators. We have a rather large smoke fire detect, 8.9 kilometers, so I'm not going to risk firing here. I did use it early enough that we get to go dark, and it only lasts for another 17 seconds here. This is not a very long duration Italian smoke either. Definitely a downside of only having that 25-second base action time on this smoke. Normally at tier 7, for example, Zara is going to have an Italian smoke that lasts for 40 seconds base. And of course, buffs are percentage when it comes to consumable action time. So you get much, much longer duration just by taking a few of those percentage buffs in actual time. So its survivability is a little bit worse, I would say, than most of the Italian cruisers. Certainly very exposed Citadel here as well. It's a big downside. Overmatchable bow and stern here. You have to be a little careful trying to keep this ship alive. The HP pool here is also quite low compared to a lot of the other Italian ships too here. It's like 32,000 HP base. I'm buffing that, of course, with the commander as well as the flag, trying to get as much HP as possible because we don't have a heal here. And I think that's worth bringing up, as this ship maybe isn't best compared with the Italian cruisers. Maybe it's better to compare it with Spanish cruisers. That's their flavor, the F key, this burst fire. And unfortunately for those Spanish cruisers, they just don't have a dispersion buff built into their burst fire. So the Asturias, I'm apologizing for pronouncing these things all wrong again, but that is an alternative fire mode. That burst similarly gives you 2 salvos instantly, 2-second reload between them, and you have to reload for another 32 seconds. Very similar hull as well. Basically the same guns there, but no dispersion buff. So I actually really noticed a massive difference here playing the Fiume over something like the Asturias, which is the Spanish cruiser line. I wish now that the Spanish cruisers had a bit of a built-in dispersion buff to their burst fire. I'd even take a longer reload time like the Fiume has to deal with. Another 5 seconds or so on the burst reload compared to the Spanish cruiser. Well worth it when we get a 20% dispersion buff. So I found this to be a rather fun cruiser at tier 7. No heal makes it challenging. Mid-tier cruisers, of course, are very challenging to play. They teach you how to use islands quite well. We don't want to be spotted most of the time. Speaking of, we are going to be spotted a lot if we are playing in open water. Having a base concealment of over 14 kilometers is quite painful. 14.26 kilometers. You can get that down, of course, with Concealment Expert on your commander, but it's still going to be very exposed, especially compared to those other Italian cruisers as well as Spanish cruiser. 13.8 on the Spanish cruiser. Gorizia, Zara in that 13.5 kilometer detect range. We need concealment to even approach that. So you're much more exposed. You have much lower HP. You have a much shorter smoke screen action time. It's harder to survive in this ship compared to those other ones. But you get a better burst fire than the Spanish cruiser. And while you don't have the sap like we would see on the other Italian cruisers, that's fine, I think, considering this burst fire is so powerful. And the HE still does some pretty solid alpha damage. And of course, does also get to light those fires. Unfortunately, we're not actually going to get the citadels here on this Grav Zeppelin. I'm going to greed out one more salvo because, of course, DPM goes way down when we burst fire. Bursts are best used when you catch someone off guard, flat broadside on, or an enemy's about to disappear behind an island. Make sure you use that burst before they actually do disappear, though. Unfortunately, we don't get the second salvo into them. But we do manage to win this one. Pretty decent damage so far out of the ship overall. Turret traverse here is quite solid, as is the main gun range. Having around 16.5 kilometers of range. Base is very nice. That is more than Zara, Gorizia, or this Asturias. Yeah, I gotta show you this one again. I just have to, okay? Reusing clips, I'm sorry, but that's just too beautiful. Full health, no one else touched them. Full burst, dead off the spawn. Oh, it's a beautiful thing. And now we're going to try and sneak around this island, get a shot off on this battleship, and then use our smoke before he shoots us. Try and be a little cheeky with going dark there. He gets the shot off before, though, so a bit of a wasted smoke. Look at that damage. I mean, that second burst was 8,400, something like that. We've done 2 salvos effectively. I know it's 4, but that's nearly 60k damage out of 2 bursts alone. You'd be happy with that in a tier 10 battleship to have 2 salvos into a match and be at 60k damage. And we're in a cruiser at tier 7. I know. We got very lucky to get the full health Mayoko. But still, it's pretty fun. It's pretty fun, and for 3,000 doubloons, I think this is rather interesting. That buff dispersion, crucial to the better playstyle here. Or at least for me, a little more fun than the Spanish cruisers. However, it's still the same kind of idea as these Spanish cruisers, so don't feel bad about missing out on this one. Just go play the Spanish cruisers if you're interested in having a burst fire. Maybe check out that tier 7 Asturias and see if that lack of dispersion buff is the reason that you find it a little bit frustrating to play. Perhaps the smoke also lends itself to a more aggressive, more fun playstyle. I think so, but having a smoke is probably a little bit worse than having a heal like we do on the Spanish cruisers. Depends on your playstyle, of course, but both are good survivability tools. But having a heal allows for you to make mistakes, take the damage, and then heal back from it. Where smokes, of course, are preventative, right? You have to know to use the smoke before you take that damage. Otherwise, there's no gaining that health back. And of course, that smoke does not last very long, so you still want to be making use of these islands to deal with enemy spotting so that they don't have the opportunity to shoot at you. Here, this Rook would be rather devastating at these ranges against such a lightly armored cruiser, but we're undetected, so we can farm in peace, trying to land some of those fires on this Novo, as well as maybe the Rook as if he decides to push in here. Firing angles are also pretty solid here. It's like 33 degree angles actually, front and back, so relatively comfortable. The turning circle radius here is incredible at 590 meters. But you have a rudder shift of 8 seconds, or at least 10.8 seconds. Goes down to around 8 seconds with rudder mod, which I was using. We'll get to that build in a second. But 10.8 second base, it's slow to start turning, but when you do begin that turn, you finally get the rudder moved over, it turns instantly, faster than a lot of destroyers, that turning circle radius. So that's why I liked having the rudder mod here instead of the prop mod. Typically, I'm not going to be speed juking with this ship. I'm likely going to dodge a few salvos with the rudder, and if I'm still under too much pressure, I'll try to use my smoke to get out of that situation. Here, the Rook pushing in. It's a little tricky to fire over some of these islands at such close range, so we can try and poke our nose around things. When our smoke is available, I'm much more likely to play more aggressive or take riskier plays. Happen to get spotted, I can use my smoke to go dark. It's really fun to have that smoke. But it's the same playstyle. It's very similar playstyle to what we already have with Italian and some of the Spanish cruisers as well, depending on the smoke or the burst fire, what we're looking at. It's an interesting combo to have, and maybe we could take a look at reworking the Spanish cruiser. I mean, it's a bit of a meme at this point, but anytime I look at the Spanish cruiser, certainly at the Tier 10 Castilla, I often title it, "Why don't I see more of this ship? Nobody plays this ship," something along those lines. And it's true, man. Nobody plays the Spanish cruisers. Maybe if we had this 20% dispersion buff to that burst fire, make it take longer. Give us a 50% longer reload on that burst fire. But give us 20% better dispersion with it. I think that's a little more interesting, don't you? I think that would be a really, really fun time. The Italian smoke, though, is quite unique, and I find it very fun to play much more aggressive. I mean, brawling in here with battleships, typically just a permanent death sentence to any cruiser at mid-tier. It's very easy to just get permanently overmatched, you have no heal to come back from it, and your game is over. But having a smoke, playing around islands, I find that really, really fun. And having Fiume, I'm going to go with Fiume, actually. Fiume is wrong. It has to be wrong. Fiume is, maybe it's not. Okay, I'm bad with the pronunciation. Anyways, take a look at the missed salvo here. Yeah, I'll distract you with some bad play. Why didn't I lead that Omaha more? Perfect opportunity for it. Teammate gets him, though. We're going to finish this game with 11 Citadels. Had another game. My first one also ended with 11 Citadels there. That was the Dev Strike into the Yarshfeld. But I think we've already shown basically what this ship can do. Better example of the AP in this one. A lot of shell hits. Of course, if you run Sansonetti here with the Italian ships, you're going to get a buff to your range even further. So yeah, we have 17.8 kilometers of range on this ship, just without even using the spotter plane here, thanks to the buff that Sansonetti gives. No problem with range, I found. These mid-tiers tend to play a lot closer too. Given that the AP here has solid pen, it actually did okay into the upper belts of a lot of these battleships as well. Similar playstyle, but a lot of fun. Honestly, I had a lot of fun with this one, so if you got an extra 3,000 doubloons kicking around, could be interesting to take a look at this event pass next update. And it's a pretty simple build for this ship. There's not a lot we want to do other than get better concealment on here, as well as buff those main guns, survivability as well. So I'm taking top grade gunner here for a little bit better DPM. 8% faster reload helps quite a lot when you have such a long reload after that burst fire. 13.2 second reload, not too bad here. It's like 0.2 worse than the Asturias here. But, you know, slight DPM nerf there. I think that's well worth it, though, to get the better burst fire. Of course, we want to be swapping between HE and AP here, so gun feeder. I want to get back to my survivability tool here in the smoke screen a little bit faster. The turret traverse at 22.5 seconds. Found I didn't really need that grease the gears. Demo expert, 18% fire chance fully buffed. Means for pretty consistent fires, which I personally do enjoy quite a lot. Otherwise, at tier 7, there's not a whole lot we can do here. No extra concealment slot here, so 12.8 kilometer detect feels a little bit bad. It's fine. It's fine still, but these other ships, Zara, Asturias, Gorizia, similar hull, but better detect on those ones. And of course, we do have lower HP. This is they nerfed this ship actually in testing. Fortunately, I did get to play with that nerfed value, but in port, we don't see that. So the fully buffed version used to apparently have over 40k HP. No longer does. Like 38,000, 37,000, something like that is what I was playing with in these battles. And of course, here is the burst fire. That beautiful 20% better dispersion is absolutely wonderful to use. And if we look at that HE shell, we can see, hello? Port? Okay, there it is. 54 millimeters of pen. So plus 20 mil pen thanks to that burst fire. Okay, why was it lagging? Okay, anyways, decent burst fire here. Very good burst fire, in fact, but no sap. It's a little bit of a different playstyle. So more like a Spanish cruiser, less like an Italian cruiser, I would say, in terms of the ammo type. Armor here being 25 on the deck, overmatched very easily. 30 doesn't get overmatched very easily at this tier, which is quite nice. And then our Citadel here, it's a little bit above water, although it's not quite as high above water as some of these other ones. So that is a nice benefit of this ship, but very exposed Citadel still. Expect to eat a lot of damage if you go flat broadside, and there is no like icebreaker or anything. So going bow on, you definitely risk eating some Citadels through your bow here as well. It's a very lightly armored cruiser at lower tier, mid tier like this. We all know how squishy these tend to be, so try and stay out of sight, and if you do get caught, you do at least have that smoke screen to hopefully prevent yourself from getting completely one-shot. No heal, though, makes it a little bit harder to deal with that damage once you've taken it compared to the Spanish cruisers. I like it, though. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.